this is where we are here. We as the CCC, we have made several submissions to our electoral management body. For example, in February, after an analysis of the voters' roll which were given in January, we realized there were lots and lots of discrepancies, which at the end of the day, would bring into scrutiny the credibility of the voters' roll. For example, we had instances where people were on the voters' roll and there were no addresses indicated on those voters' rolls. And even if, with our experience with respect to the March by-elections, we realized that a lot of people were turned away from the traditional polling stations that they've always voted at. One will go to the polling station and you'll be told your name is not there. But that person has been voted in that particular polling station for years. So these were the concerns that we raised with ZEC to say, ZEC, we have done an audit of the voters' roll. Can you please take these concerns into consideration so that by the time we get to the next election, there won't be any contestation? But unfortunately, that was not done. We never got audience from ZEC. The only thing that we got was a statutory instrument when they were saying they were actually gazetting alterations to the voters' roll, which we believe no consultations were made to the respective stakeholders. So this is one of the concerns that we have in terms of consultations with regards to electoral processes. And that ZEC has been on record saying that you political parties, you citizens, you have always said, the elections are rigged. And so if you believe elections are rigged, then give us the evidence, proffer the evidence to us. So as the CCC, as the citizens movement, we said, okay, we are taking up that challenge because we are the ones where we have been pivotal in terms of questioning, the integrity of some of the electoral processes. So we wrote a dossier to ZEC providing evidence with regards to instances where we felt there was serious election manipulation. And we wrote to ZEC in August, and one of the issues that we highlighted, particularly with reference to the 2018 elections, was the way the results were administered. In some instances, for example, there was a specific issue that the transmission of results were diverted. They had to go to a district, a ZEC office, which really was not, the appropriate transmission route, which had been agreed upon. And we realized there were lots of discrepancies. For example, we had polling stations, 16 polling stations that had identical, results for President Chamisa and also for Idim Nangagwa. So those were serious discrepancies that we noted. And in some areas, like for example, in Mutare North, we had instances where the presidential results were far much more than those of the parliamentarians. Yes, yet because we are in a harmonized election where we vote for a councillor, for a member of parliament, and for the president. And what it means, each person is given 3 sets of ballot papers. So under such circumstances, how do you explain those serious discrepancies? So those are some of the issues that we highlighted to ZEC. And more so, with regards to the political environment, we have, particularly with our experiences in the by-elections. Remember, in one of our press conferences, as the CCC, we indicated that we are using the by-elections as a... Okay. We are using the by-elections as a test run to see how prepared are we as a party and how prepared is our EMB in terms of conducting an election that will not bring disrepute. So we realized there were lots of issues. For example, the issue of assisted voters, particularly in rural areas. You can't have a situation like what we experienced in Chipinge, Ward 8, for example, whereby by 10 a.m. we had over 80 assisted voters. Really, that didn't make any sense. So these are some of the concerns that we highlighted, and these are some of the issues that we're saying, let's sit down, let's see how best we can prepare ourselves for the next election, which is in 2023. So basically, that is the brief context as to where we are coming from as the citizens movement, and what we have done, and what has actually motivated us to come up with this electoral, reforms blueprint, which we intend to share with you. And this is also the reason why we invited our stakeholders from the civic society to say we need to sit down and start our negotiations with regards to the electoral reforms. We need to sit down as parliamentarians who are here to start negotiating on electoral reforms. We need to sit down with the state, the Minister of Justice, our Zimbabwe, our electoral management body. Let's see what are the appropriate laws that can help us in 2023 in coming up, with an election that passes all the credibility and all the integrity tests. I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Champion Ellen, for such a wonderful presentation and clarity in terms of where we're going as a citizen movement. I want to move on and prepare the next speaker. I want us to welcome a man on whose shoulders lies the responsibility of uniting this country post-2023. A man who, despite all the provocations, intimidation, harassment, and everything that has come his way, he has remained resolute in ensuring that we have a peaceful resolution of the crisis in Zimbabwe. I want to ask the next President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, to come and give us his words as we launch this prepared document.
Oh, thank you. We may be seated. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm being welcomed by the microphone. I'm sure it's modern technology here. Thank you, colleagues, members of the press, here present. Thank you, members of the press here present. Just to acknowledge our members of parliament who are here in all your various jurisdictions. We appreciate you and acknowledge you, the various chairpersons of the portfolio committees. We acknowledge also our mayors and our councillors who are here present. I see also our chief whip. We acknowledge you, both of the caucus in parliament and also our caucus in the local government. We welcome our very distinguished guests from the civil society who are here present. We acknowledge you. Thank you very much for coming to this launch and event. I wish to also acknowledge and welcome members of the diplomatic corps and their representatives who are here present. Thank you for gracing this occasion. It would be inadequate for us not to also appreciate those who are from government, the state institutions, either openly or surreptitiously. We welcome you here. We appreciate your presence. Thank you very much for coming to this event, which is not going to take a lot of time, but just to gather to launch our 7 minimum electoral reform fundamentals that will sufficiently prepare our great country, Zimbabwe, for the next level in leveling the playing field of our elections and also creating a platform for a political democracy of our country and making sure that we do not have disputed elections. But, honorable members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen, our councillors, allow me to just say we are meeting within a context of very sad developments in our country. 14 June 2022, our two members of parliament, Honorable Job Scala and Honorable Stolle, were arrested. To this day, it has been 105 days, 105 days. They are still incarcerated together with the majority of the victims, or those who have been victimized, the Nyatsime 14. What is clear is that this is an assault on democracy, an assault on the will of the people, but also an undermining of the sovereign declaration of the people of Zimbabwe. Because Honorable Scala and Honorable Stolle were elected by the people of Zimbabwe. They are not honorable by mistake. They are not honorable by omission. You don't treat honorable members like common criminals, especially on the basis just of an allegation, which allegation is politically contrived and motivated. What is clear is that Honorable Scala and Honorable Stolle did not commit an offense. Their own offense is to stand against repression, oppression, corruption, dictatorship, tyranny, and bad governance. And that surely can't be an offense, because they were voted on the basis of that platform by the citizens of Zimbabwe. So that is a very sad day. It continues to be a sad moment. We, as the citizens movement, are taking this issue seriously. We have left no stone unturned. We know what our opponents are expecting us to do. We don't normally accept invitations from those who do not like us. Neither do we accept advice from those who stand at the opposite of the moral and political spectrum. But we've done everything to make sure that within the confines of legality, constitutionality, and also peace, we are able to secure their release. I will not go into details of what we are doing within the country and across within the region, and of course on the continent, to reach out to the highest offices, including the United Nations, to make sure that the issue of this pre-trial incarceration is dealt with. We are very serious. We know as the next government who will face many challenges, trials, and tribulations. Our people are going to be persecuted. Our supporters are going to be subjected to harassment. A lot of traps are going to be set, booby traps in our way. We will resist and overcome all of them. And we remain committed to making sure that we achieve change within our lifetime. And we give our great country better days and better life, happiness for all and freedom for all. Ladies and gentlemen, with that background, let me emphasize ladies and gentlemen, with that background, let me just emphasize the fact that this document we are launching today is our humble submission to the ongoing discourse on what needs to be corrected to conduce the environment for elections in our country. The liberation struggle, which is our struggle, was a collective quest to create a nation that is founded upon the people's sovereignty and the time-tested principle of one man, one vote. Our forebears, forefathers, foremothers sacrificed life and limb to birth this wonderful and great nation, where the right of every citizen to vote and self-determine is guaranteed, assured, and secured. The right to vote is a fundamental principle, and so fundamental and so precious that without which the people cannot truly be free and independent. I was in Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe just a couple of weeks ago. The stories, gory stories I got, the narrations of citizens in Uzumba, you would not imagine that we're in a free Zimbabwe. They have not known independence. They have not tested independence. They have not known the meaning of the right to choose, because choices are made on their behalf. And the right to choose attracts death, or vandalism, or destruction of property, that tells you that we have destroyed the very foundation of the liberation struggle, its ideals and principles. And that is the platform we stand on. As I stand together with other change champions within the change champion movement, we are pushing for the restoration of that special social contract, that new consensus between the citizens and those who govern them. And I must say, those who govern them, not those who rule them. Some would love to say that they are rulers, but that is what is fundamentally wrong about our politics. We have people who are chosen to lead, but they end up ruling. And that is the tragedy, not just of our country, but also of the African continent. And that is what we seek to challenge, correct, and put into proper context. And I can tell you that we are no Mickey Mouse in fighting for this alternative and ideal. We rest and stand on the shoulders of Kwame Nkrumah. We stand on the shoulders of Nelson Mandela, Rolihlahla. We stand on the foundation of Amilcar Cabral. We stand on the foundation of Frantz Fanon. We stand on the foundation of great men and women who have fought to liberate this country, to liberate our continent and nations, to make sure that the right to vote is respected, because it is the sole source of authority for any individual to govern in a modern democratic society. Voting is such an instrumental and important element that citizens have to utilize and invoke to self-govern, self-correct. There is evidence that everything has gone wrong in Zimbabwe except ourselves. You can look at the number of people who are in the diaspora, over 5 million. That tells you that something is wrong in Zimbabwe. You look at the number of people who die every day on account of diseases that we can actually deal with. That tells you that something is fundamentally wrong. The blackouts, the power blackouts that we are experiencing every day, something that is normal to have a shortage of everything. A shortage of love, a shortage of leadership, a shortage of water, a shortage of power, and more importantly, a shortage of government. That is not normal. We need to correct all those challenges that we are facing. But the fundamental source within which we have to correct that is the right to vote, which is the lifeblood of any democratic, progressive, and prosperous nation. And that right is enshrined through a peaceful, free, credible election that is held through a process of simple, accurate, and verifiable, transparent election. But you would realize that since 1980, credible and undisputed elections have been a pipe dream in Zimbabwe. People have not been able to choose their own leaders. There was a fight between President Mugabe and President Joshua Nkomo. Joshua Nkomo left without this fight being resolved. There was a fight between Robert Mugabe and Edgar Tekere. Tekere left without this fight being resolved. There was a fight between Kempton Makamure and Robert Mugabe. Kempton left. This fight was not resolved. There was a fight between my own predecessor, Dr. Richard Morgan Tsvangirai. Both Mugabe and Dr. Richard Morgan Tsvangirai have left us. We still have that outstanding challenge of disputed elections. This is what we need to correct. This is what we need to remedy. Indeed, the history of disputed elections is common story within the region, on the continent. Zimbabwe is known for a testimony of elections that are disputed. That is part of what we need to resolve. It is within this context that we have learned that from 2018, when we had the election observer mission reports and other critical election bodies sharing their perspectives on our election, we have been unfortunate that insufficient work has been done. There hasn't been any appetite to reform and correct all the boxes being ticked that we failed to make sure we put in place. As you know, Bad politics corrupts good economics. Our country has been in this inextricable link between bad governance and disputed elections. As we speak, not only do we have a disputed and contested occupant of the presidency, we also have a disputed and contested electoral process. We also have a disputed and contested electoral program and landscape. Certainly, as we look at this crisis of disputed elections, which is the main source of our problems in this country, we need to find a common solution. The solution being our PREPARE document. PREPARE is our humble submission. To say PREPARE as an acronym is Pre-Election Pact on Reforms. This is a product of wide consultative programs with the citizens. We have listened to the voices of the war veterans. We have listened to the voices of the students. We have listened to the voices of labor, trade unions. We have listened to the voices of the women. We have listened to the voices of the church. We have listened across the board in the rural areas, traditional leaders telling us in their own perspective what they need to be seeing put in place. A lot of people complained, particularly those in ZANU-PF, when I mentioned the issue of the United Nations as a multilateral body to oversee and supervise our elections. But I got that from Manicaland, from one of the chiefs who told me, and I will not mention the name, who told me that ZANU-PF must be the last ones to complain about the UN running or supervising the election in this country. Because in 1980, we asked them to do it on our behalf, and the United Nations did a perfect job. So it's not something new, it's not something bizarre. This is coming from the citizens. And when I articulate the citizen voice, don't shoot the messenger. Please understand the substance of the message. It's not my story, it's the story of the Zimbabwean people, the citizens themselves, who are demanding this. As I indicated also, the International Electoral Observer Mission reports were very clear. NDI, IRI, the European Union, the Commonwealth, the African Union, SADC, they had clear and well-articulated recommendations on what should be done to move our country forward. But if you look at it, not a single thing has been done to move the process forward. This is why we contextualize by coming here with our document, PREPARE. PREPARE is our humble submission to prepare for credible elections, to prepare for peaceful elections, but to prepare for undisputed free and fair elections, to prepare even ZEC to respect what God says through his people, to prepare ZEC to be ready for the diaspora vote. We are waiting to see ZEC Canada, ZEC Australia, ZEC US, ZEC South Africa, ZEC Botswana, like we saw in Angola for the first time, like we saw in Kenya, like we are seeing in the rest of the region. All of the regional countries, they respect the diaspora vote. So for the 7 issues that we have, which are the 7 pillars, we have identified 7 fundamentals that we are saying this is our humble submission on the table to the people of Zimbabwe, to other stakeholders, on how we are going to resolve issues. This is our plan to rescue Zimbabwe. This is our plan to exit our country from this vortex of a political crisis. And we've identified 7 of them. Number 1, the right to vote. Number 2, the credibility of the electoral body and its processes. Number 3, timeous, real-time announcement of the result. We saw it in Kenya, it works. Of course, there are the issues here and there, but we must have people knowing the full result. We have the issue of the credibility of the voters' roll. We have the issue of the security of the voter. We have the issue of the security of the vote. We also have the issue of political freedoms, in particular, access to the media. We have issues that we have articulated and raised that we would want to go into without exhausting all of them. We also have the very important issue of the role of our institutions of the state, in particular our security services and the traditional leaders, because they are ours. They need to be respected, and we need to be very clear in terms of what we stand for. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of parliament, without wasting too much of your time, members of the diplomatic corps, let me and allow me to just go into the issues without going into the detail, because the document is going to be launched and you have your copy. We are also going to make sure that this document is publicly published and widely circulated. We'll get this copy also to our parliament. We'll get this copy to ZEC. We'll get this copy to SADC, the AU. But more interestingly, we'll also make sure that all the other political players, I now understand that we have over 100 political parties, in Zimbabwe, and we will just reach out to those whom we understand to be political parties, and I'm saying those whom we understand. So we have those issues, and we are going to raise them with all the key national institutions, regional and international institutions. The first one, the right to vote. In a nutshell, on the right to vote, we want to make sure that all Zimbabweans who are eligible to vote are given access and capacity and mechanism to register as voters. Appropriate mechanisms have to be put in place. We want to see the diaspora vote. Let Zimbabweans in the diaspora be allowed to vote. There can never be taxation without representation. If you believe that we're getting remittances from the diaspora, we can't receive without giving. When we receive the remittances, we must give that right, the right to determine the government, so that there is enhancement of the legitimacy of those who are in government. Prisoners must also be allowed to vote, and mechanisms have to be put in place. People with disabilities, PWDs, and those with special needs also have to be catered for. In particular, I want to see all civil servants, security personnel, and persons on official duty outside their designated polling stations on the election day being given the opportunity to vote. Not a command vote, but their right to self-determine and indicate those whom they want to vote for. Voter registration has been marred by a number of challenges under our government, which is sure to come. We will make sure that there's automatic voter registration, because if we have a citizen's roll, surely we should be able to then, from that digital platform, produce a voter's roll on those who have attained the age of 18. The obligation on the citizen or resident is just to come and indicate the polling station where you want to vote, so that our polling station-based voting is not violated. So voter registration is very important. We also have a raft of issues that we have indicated there. I will not go into the details of them all, but just to suffice to say that we are also emphasizing the issue of voter education, in particular, voter education that ensures the secrecy of the vote by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and also other stakeholders. ZEC must be, as an obligation, be asked to dispel misinformation and propaganda that some elements have been peddling, particularly in the countryside, that people would know where you would have voted, and that you will be killed if you vote for the alternative, and that if you vote overwhelmingly for the alternative, you will die. I'm sure this lie has been dispelled in Bulilima Mangwe. In Bulilima, we managed to win of the 3 seats that were being contested. ZANU-PF had all of them. In 2018, we won 2 of them. And after winning 2 of them, I haven't heard that there's one person who has died on account of having voted for us. That is sufficient evidence that the citizen movement is on the move. And of course, you know, the by-elections that we have had, we have won over 65% so far. Out of the MPs, 28, we won 19. Out of the 126 ward council elections, we have managed to win about 84. That tells you that we're a serious force. And that's why you listen to ZANU-PF, they are panicking like a snake. They understand that they are fighting a baobab tree and they want to cut it using a razor blade. They will not succeed. They are panicking. We are on the move. We are unstoppable. And they will not be able to stop us, I can assure you. They will try all sorts of tactics. We are on the move and we are in the driving seat. That's why they are backing, because they know that we are the dog with the bone. And we are not moving. We are not moving sideways. We are not moving backwards. We are very clear about what we are doing. So the right to vote, thank you. The right to vote is fundamental, especially the issue of what is in the Constitution, Section 67, that entails the right of all the citizens to have, franchise in voting and in joining a political party of their choice. Number two is the credibility of the voters' roll. On this, I'm not going into detail, but two things that we are going to emphasize. One, let all the political parties and their representatives sign off an audited voters' roll before the voters' roll is allowed to be authenticated and validated. Number two, we want to make sure that when we go to an election, let us agree on an audited voters' roll. That has been the case in the region. The voters' roll must be audited. We don't want an unaudited voters' roll that changes every day. I think our champion, Ellen, mentioned that we asked the SEC to get a voters' roll. They kept on playing around the voters' roll, saying that, look, the one that you have is not the appropriate one. So we don't want a voters' roll that changes depending on the weather on a particular day. That has to be sorted out. We also want the issue of assisted voters to be dealt with, especially a separate role to be created for those people who would say they want to be on the assisted voters roll, so that we know in advance the people who are there and they are not there on account of coercion, command voting, or other intimidatory tactics. Number three, the issue of a real-time credible results management system. Let there be real-time announcement of the votes. This system by some other guy who said we must do meticulous verification for over 2 weeks. Yes, the law now is a prescribed time frame, but we want the result to be announced at the polling station. Let the presidential election be announced at the polling station where people have voted, the MPs vote, the councillors vote. And once the result has been announced there, it is the valid vote. That is not announcing the whole result. V11 forms must also be collected, posted on a public portal, accessible to members of the media and to us as political parties. If Mr. Mnangagwa wins that kind of an election, I'll be the first one to be before the whole world. CNN, BBC, RT, all the international television stations, to congratulate him and encourage him. And I'll happily accept the role that people of Zimbabwe would have assigned to me. What we will not accept is when people of Zimbabwe vote for us, Mr. Mnangagwa says, no, you must be opposition, come and be my guy, playing to my tune. No, we don't listen to the tune of a competitor. We listen to the tune of those who give us the mandate, the citizens of Zimbabwe. And that is why we have said no to Pollard. That is why we have said no to backdoor into parliament. I was not elected to represent people in parliament. If I wanted to be a parliamentarian, I would have remained in Kwazana. But now they have their honorable MP, Charlton Wende. I was voted for to be a presidential occupant, and I'm ready. I hear a lot of people saying, oh no, they have no plan. Have you ever seen people who have no plan, whose life is so threatened the way we are? They've tried every trick in the book. Guns, they've tried, accidents, they've tried, poison, they're trying everything. Women, they try almost everything. And I can see some of you are already salivating. Don't fall for it. So the issue of a credible result management system is such an important one. And we have a raft of measures that we are putting in place that we're also suggesting as a way forward. Number 4 is the integrity of the election and electoral processes, especially the appointment of ZEC personnel. And I'm about to finish now. The issue of the commissioners, staff, polling officers should be purely on merit, competence, and all the officials must pass the critical test. Number 1, the integrity test. Number 2, the professionalism test. Number 3, the independence test. Number 4, the accountability test. Number 5 is the patriotism test. Now, if you look at some of them, they are clearly and blatantly partisan. They do not know the difference between ZANU-PF and Zimbabwe. There is a difference. You don't serve a political party, you serve the country. Whoever wins, that is the decision of the people of Zimbabwe. So yes, all these objections we have put in place around the issue of ZEC processes is something that we want to be fixed and corrected, especially the issue of election logistics, the polling station distribution, the voters' roll registration, issues of the voters' roll and delimitation. ZEC must have a periodic and time-bound stakeholder engagement so that they do not do certain things nicodemously and behind closed doors, like just introducing a new fee structure for candidates. Who did you consult? It takes two to tango. Don't tango alone. We are the candidates, we are the players. If you are a referee, you don't occupy the pitch and stadium by yourself. Ask us, the players, so that the game is complete. So ZEC is a big issue. We continue to raise these issues, particularly around the issue of the polling material procurement, the design of the ballot paper, the quality of the ballot paper, the ballot papers that are going to be printed. In other countries, they actually agree on the printer of the ballot papers. We want that to be the case here. And a lot of people will be saying, oh no, ZANU-PF will not agree. This is not a ZANU-PF affair, it's a national affair. And ZANU-PF is just a tiny component of the whole complex called Zimbabwe. So yes, they have to be part of the process, but they are not going to be the alpha and omega, the beginning and the end of what's good and correct for Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe belongs to Zimbabweans, and we fought for the liberation of our country, and those ideals have to be defended. And if need be, we need to even lay our lives for this fundamental ideal. The issue of delimitation, we have a raft of reforms, but number 5 is political freedoms and media access. You know, the state media is supposed to be a public broadcaster, ZTV, radio, but they are being treated like a private station for ZANU-PF. Every day you see ZANU-PF officials, they even convene their meetings via the public media. Abuse of state institutions. We need to correct this. It's important for the media to be available. And I've said, let's have a regulated presidential debate. You can't allow people to go to an election where they have not subjected to scrutiny. Presidential candidates. I saw in Kenya, there was a presidential debate, and Baba decided to participate in absentia, but there has to be a mandatory way of saying, let the candidates come and face the citizens and be asked and provide solutions. Our rallies have been banned, a number of them. In the rural areas, roadblocks, commonplace, particularly in the rural areas. We've had challenges, our people being intimidated. Chiefs have given us reports that they've been threatened. Mr. Mohad has been doing the rounds across the whole country, asking chiefs to support them. And, those are issues we have to deal with, particularly weaponizing the law, weaponizing traditional institutions, and weaponizing state institutions. This is an issue that has to be dealt with. And we are saying access to the media is a very important one, particularly the public media. It is in terms of the laws of our country, but they have been violated. The security of the vote. There must be a fair, impartial, and expeditious adjudication of all election petitions. There's one election petition by President Tsvangirai which has not been heard. I think it's a 2002 one. That tells you what's wrong and what's fundamentally inappropriate in the context of how our petitions are supposed to be dealt with. Of course, the issue of power transfer is very important. We must not have murky arrangements. There must be a trajectory and a signposted program on respecting the will of the people, the irreversibility of the will of the people. The security of the vote is an important and very crucial element. And of course, it's an issue that we are putting there. You will see the details the role of the state institutions, in particular our security sector, our police services, defense forces or services, traditional leaders. I'm not going to go into detail, but the issue of command voting, command-assisted voting by traditional leaders, coercive and marshalling of voters is an apartheid practice. It is a Rhodesian tendency that has been adopted lock, stock and barrel by ZANU-PF and must be dropped, must be stopped. We are already working on mechanisms as a citizen movement of making sure that people are freely able to express themselves and they are able to vote in peace and they are able to express themselves. The judiciary is also important. We do not want our judiciary to be under the manacles and shackles of a particular political party, because they are not an extension of a party, they are an extension of us as citizens, having derived their mandate from us, the citizens. The issue of election supervision and monitoring is also very important. We want the UN to supervise the elections, SADC to play a very important role, and observer accreditation process to be the preserve of ZEC with minimum influence from the state. ZEC must be truly independent. They must not have their fund coming from the Ministry of Finance or a ministry. They must have a separate fund that is guaranteed by Parliament, so that they have accountability to Parliament, auditability to Parliament. As it is, their vote comes under Ministry of Justice. That is problematic, and that undermines the independence. Because he who pays the piper calls the tune, and we want to make sure that we liberate this independent institution from the one who is paying, so that they are paid by the citizens. Last but not least is the security of the voter. Fundamental rights, freedoms, and security after voting must be guaranteed. This whole primitive thing, do you know, in Zimbabwe we are worse off than baboons and monkeys. The way we fight over politics, you would never see that kind of a fight when you go to the bush. Donkeys don't even fight that way. So primitive, using knob carries, spears, stones, that's so primitive. Just over politics. We must change the political culture and say certain things, violence, threats, intimidation on political opponents, roadblocks that are illegal must go. Candidates must not embark on flagrant and open vote buying. We've seen our colleagues in ZANU-PF. They love displaying their loot during elections. And I've advised people in the countryside that, look, when they come to you, take back your money. That is now finding its way back into your pockets. But we cannot have vote buying as a practice. We need to make sure that we allow freedom of all people and their security after voting. In conclusion, I must say that this 7-point prepare electoral reform fundamentals is a critical and fundamental building block to the election integrity and credibility. I'll be engaging the various leaders within the region so that they understand where we are coming from. I have already said this whole debate about sanctions in Zimbabwe have to go. Sanctions have to go, and this is our offer. I've already developed a paper together with our colleagues on how to get Zimbabwe out of the sanctions. This is what we are going to put in place to SADC, to the international community, the way out of sanctions. Part of it is this prepare document, because prepare is our banner of peace. Prepare is our banner of legitimacy. Prepare is our banner of credibility. And that is why we must give effect to these requirements, because this is the new consensus post-independence that has to be built around transforming our country. Having done all these extensive consultations with the citizens, I'm sure you know that the issues I'm saying and mentioning are a profound and modest indication of the requirements that Zimbabweans are asking for in order for us to have a free and fair election outcome. A new great Zimbabwe in our lifetime is a possibility. We can make it. One people united, one nation, one vision. God bless you. God bless Zimbabwe. God is in it. I thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, President. In this main it's clear that there's a connector between the past, the present, and the future. And he's only asking all of us as Zimbabweans to dream and dream with him as we unlock and bring a democratic breakthrough. The change champion in chief is going to take a few questions, if there are any questions before we go to the launch.
Thank you very much. Any questions not from the members of parliament? Because I know that will then be echoed here. I see as part of your practice you like heckling. And councillors also, I see followed suit in your chambers. So yes, from members of the press, if you have any questions around the prepared document before we officially launch it. And I would ask members to be availed with the copies so that we then have the ceremony to officially launch and declare this document. We'll get this document to every country, to every embassy, and to all people who care to listen to our take. I see our colleagues from Japan, I see our colleagues from the US, the European Union, and different countries, the African diplomats and their representatives here present, will get these copies onto you, and so that you also understand what our position is. Over to you, members of the press. Yes, Rutendo.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to understand, given the few months that are left for the 2023 election, do you see this being possible, the reforms that you are articulating? Having failed to do this in the past, since the last elections, and with just a few months, is this a possibility or is it a pie in the sky?
Well, is it a possibility or a pie in the sky? It's a possibility. It's an overnight job. It's a political will job. You know what we did during the inclusive government, the global political agreement, where there's will, there's a way. We still have a long time before the elections. Just one night, 1 week, we'll be able to deal with all the issues that are supposed to be dealt with. By the way, the process of having reforms has already begun in different quarters. I know that in Poland they were discussing their own other processes. I know that within government they've also done their own proposal. And we have put our humble submission. This is not only the prepared document, we've also done an electoral draft bill that would want to be considered whenever we are able to then debate and find a common way forward. So yes, it's very possible. It's not a pie in the sky. It's a pie in the pocket, and it's a pie that should be in the mouth. And we are making sure that we do what has to be done by all of us to achieve these electoral reforms. If we don't achieve them, we will have a vicious cycle of disputed elections and toxicity, and of course back to instability, contested state. That cannot be the story of our country. We need to move to the next level and build our country together and stop this acrimony and start harmony. Stop this division and start this amplification of our common oneness as a people. So yes, Rutendo, it's not a pie in the sky. It's achievable. It's doable. All that is required is political will. And we want all the political players and all the other players, civil society, to have a clarion call and agree on the way forward. Yes, my brother?
Should everything fail through the engagement and also the document, what will be the next step for you? Are we going to see your party boycotting elections?
Well, I must say that we are not budgeting for failure. We have never done so. We are not known for failing. We are very clear about what we want to achieve. Zimbabweans know what they want. We won the liberation struggle by way of courage, boldness, and sacrifice of the people of Zimbabwe. We have built our country to where we are on account of our capacities, and we'll continue to build in that regard. But what I can tell you is that this whole thing of boycotting an election, you boycott a national process. When your maize field has been invaded by baboons, do you boycott your maize field? And you throw your hands in the air and say, the baboons have taken over. No, we must go back and reclaim the maize field from the baboons. So this whole thing of suggesting that we must leave baboons to take over, no, we are the people of Zimbabwe. We want to make sure that the situation is corrected, the conditions are conducive for a free and fair election. So yes, we leave no stone unturned and no turn unstoned. to make sure that elections in Zimbabwe are indeed are indeed free and fair. Thank you very much. Yes, my brother.
I've got two questions, so I'll ask the first, then ask the second one after you put this one. Mine has to do with the integrity of the electoral process.
Indeed.
Currently, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is remapping constituency boundaries using the current or whichever voters law they are using. And they are saying that it has, for you to have an election next year, they have to finish the process by December, and that the constituencies are then gazetted, which will be used in the election in next year. I hope you understand that.
Indeed. Very.
Now my question is, with the amount of time, how are you going to ensure that that process, there is integrity in the process which is already or which is currently underway as we speak?
We are already a player. We are already engaging ZEC. By the way, we have been participating in by-elections and winning them under unfair conditions. And the fact that we accept the outcome does not mean that we accept the conditions and the process. We have contested, even in victory, we have shown the magnanimity and humility to express the areas that we feel have to be remedied and corrected. So yes, we are already engaging with ZEC. There are other processes that we are engaging in, and we are emphasizing the integrity of the process by involvement and inclusion. That's why in our reform proposal, we would want time-bound and also agreed upon regular consultations so that we are also part of the process, and these processes are not done behind iron curtains. We want this process to be above board. So time is there. We still have time. Of course, time is running out, but we can still do it. As I said, and this is what I think Rutendo mentioned, where there's will, there's a way. And that way is this prepare way that we are putting on the table.
Okay. My second question has to do with whether it's the ministry or it's the person. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission falls under the Ministry of Justice. The judiciary, as you indicated, also falls under the same ministry. How are you going to ensure that there is separation of powers? Because just recently the Minister of Justice made it public that when it comes to disputes, they are not even going to allow foreigners to be involved. They have already taken a position, yet it's the ministry that administers both the elections and the justice department.
Well, I'm so happy that you are articulating one of the problems that we have, and you seem to be very eloquent in that problem diagnosis. And the definition of the solution is in our proposal in Prepare. And we've given a humble thing. We need accountability, we need independence, and that has to be a product of a political process. And this is our clarion call. It's going to be a politically negotiated process. Yes, we have had politically negotiated processes in the past. It has been elusive in the recent past, but we still are confident that nation building is not a solo affair, is not a partisan affair. We need to bring all the key stakeholders together to fashion the common way forward together and bring back independence and professionalism to our courts. Chambers of justice must be decontaminated and be pure in dispensing justice to all the citizens, to inspire confidence amongst the citizens, because their authority is actually derived authority from us, the citizens. So it's something that is achievable, and it will be part of the political process, and we'll achieve it. Thank you very much. I think I'll take two last questions. We've done a fantastic job, I think, within a short space of time. Yes, my sister then Rutendo, I think you want to have a second bite.
Thank you very much. My name is Tapazwa Kachiko from Newsday.
Newsday, thank you.
And I've realized some of the issues we have been raising are legislative, which would require the legislators of the CCC to act, as ZEC has always said, that it doesn't make legislative reforms. It's for the legislators to come forward and push for those things. Now I'm seeing we have this other part which is ruling. Do you see CCC sailing through with these reforms in Parliament and have them implemented for the forthcoming elections. And also looking at the issue of time, which was highlighted by the Lieutenant.
Thank you, Tafadzwa. The reason why members of parliament are here is just to demonstrate our commitment to make sure that we do our part. But this is not a partisan thing. It's not a CCC thing. It's a national issue. Elections are not a party affair. We are not talking about primary elections or internal elections. We are talking about national elections. So it's not about political parties. It's about all of us as stakeholders coming together to find a common way forward. It's not an easy fight, but it's a fight that has to be won. So yes, Tafadzwa, I hear you. Time, you go back to time again. Time is there. We'll achieve that. Legislators have to do what has to be done, but it has to be instigated and initiated and triggered at a political level. And the politics is what I'm now putting on the table to say this is what is needed. So yes, we are putting all mechanisms to reach out to the President of ZANU-PF, President Mnangagwa, and all those who matter in this issue, because it's not a partisan issue, it's a national issue. It is about the liberation struggle and where we come from as a people. We need to go back to our founding values, our ethos, our founding principles of one man, one vote. But that's only possible when we come together as a people and as a nation. So it's achievable, it's doable. Lieutenant?
The issue of transfer of power has been the major bone of contention. I think if you think of the year 2008, it was the issue of transfer of power. And I realize that it's among your demands for electoral reforms. How, as a party, do you want this to be done? What should be there, to ensure that Zimbabweans, are moved from this power to the next power that will be won?
Well, I hear you when you say transfer of power. In the opposition, we have won the elections, but have not transferred power. What is needed is for us to win both the elections and the power, having been given the mandate by the people. Power is transacted in the ballot. Power is transacted in a vote. A vote is a power transfer platform. It is a regime change instrument as it is a regime retention instrument. But I hear colleagues in ZANU-PF freak at the regime change, when in fact the whole purpose of elections is to either retain a regime or change it. And people of Zimbabwe have always changed the regime. But colleagues in ZANU-PF then refuse to come out and say, we don't come out. But this time it's not going to be the same. That's part of the conversation we want to have and we are putting on the table. But if they refuse, we have mechanisms to make sure that when they have been taken off the seat of government, they must comply. Go and do what has to be done. Sit where we are sitting, and then we sit where they are sitting. We take over, we run government, we show them what they have not done well, and we also amplify the good things that they've done to deserve our integrity among the family of nations. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think having said that, colleagues, may we then come and officially come up front and then to the front, and then we launch our document. Yes. Thank you very much. We are going to launch our prepared document, and of course our prepared document